Dr. Cliff, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, and welcome to the All Around Adventure podcast.
Thanks, man. This is going to be exciting.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to hearing more of your story. We just kind of connected recently, and then, I started following you on Instagram, and you've been in this game for quite some time, helping animals. So just to kind of set the framework and get our conversation going here, I like to go back to the beginning with my guests. So that's what I'd like to do for you as well, because every great story, of course, has a beginning. So can you take us back a little bit here? Just can you kind of tell us animals and this passion that you've made a lifelong pursuit of? What kind of started all that for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I graduated in 98, so I'm 52 now, just hit 52 a couple of days ago. So I've been a vet more than half my life, which is kind of surreal. And I still love it. I was not one of those kids though that knew I wanted to be a veterinarian. It was always kind of on the radar, but I was really more serious about being a police officer or being a science teacher. There was a period that I was going to be a ghost hunter. My brother and I were going to get motorcycles and ride down to Mexico because apparently that's where all the ghosts are. I don't know. This was a long time ago, but I was the kid that took care of all the class pets. And when it was, a long weekend, I would take the class guinea pig home or the class bunny home. And all of my show and tell notes were all about animals. And I did a speech contest once in junior high, and it was about animals. And so the writing was on the wall. And when I did become a veterinarian and started to get on social media, and I had this little community television show like 13 years ago, a call-in show, my teachers from even primary school were reaching out to me and saying, we all knew you would be a veterinarian well before you did. So it's in my blood. There's no one in my family that's a vet. There's no one in my family that's a doctor or any sort of like healing practice. So I get to be the first. I love it.
So you're based in like the Toronto area of Canada, if I recall. Is that where you're from originally?
Yeah, I grew up basically in a community section of Mississauga called Malton. And then, which is just, maybe 30 minutes outside of Toronto. I now live in Toronto, and my clinic is in one of the cities north of it called Markham. So it's all within about 20 minutes of me, and my whole family's, my brother, my sister, my kids live in Toronto. My parents are in Brampton. Like they're all close by. So yeah, I'm a Toronto boy for sure. Toronto Maple Leafs through and through.
And I'm guessing that's also where you studied to become a veterinarian. Did you study at a university there, or did you go someplace else for that?
Yeah, great question. So I was lucky enough and worked hard enough to get into the Ontario Veterinary College in Guelph, which is about an hour outside of Toronto. At the time, there were only 4 vet schools in Canada. Now there's 5. Guelph is one of the top 5 in the world. Consistently, it was top 3 when I was there. I don't know what that means.
Top 3, heck yeah.
I'm just gonna throw it out there. Nothing too subtle. Yeah. So I did go there, but as I tell a lot of students, I have a lot of students that come to my clinic and do volunteer work or placement work. I've got 2 from Paris, France right now, as well as 1 from Guelph. And if there's students that are looking to get into vet school, we'll talk about my application process, because I worked hard enough and did well enough that I got in on my first try, which is very, very unusual. And I like to joke that one of the secrets was when they asked me what I would do if I wasn't accepted. This was during the interview process. What they meant was, like go and get more experience with cows, or increase my grades in this program or something. And what I thought they meant was, what if you don't get into Guelph at all? And I basically said, look, I'm destined to be a veterinarian. So if I have to, I'll travel the world and go to school in the UK or in Australia. And then I rolled the dice and said, so I'm going to be a veterinarian. You might as well accept me so I can go to Guelph and you guys can get my tuition. Cause it's going to happen either way. And I guess it worked because they accepted me, but that was quite a risk for sure.
Now, going to vet school, of course, with any endeavor that one sets out to in life, you have to master the basics and the fundamentals first. So, I guess what I would assume, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, that the fundamentals in vet school would be cats and dogs, because I'm sure that's probably what most people would want to bring to a veterinary clinic to get treatment for. Was that the case? Did you kind of like get your start with cats and dogs, or was it something else maybe?
No, not at all. So Kramer from Seinfeld has a great quote when he's wants to go to the veterinarian himself when he's sick. And of course, Seinfeld gives him a hard time and he says, "Jerry, veterinarians are way better than doctors. They can treat a chicken, a horse, a cow, or a dog all in the same day." So he was right. We started out learning everything. And even though I was from the city and I had some racehorse experience, I'd worked as what's called a hot walker, which is not an indication of my appearance, or my sense of style. A hot walker is usually a 20-year-old. I was 15 at the time though, that basically walks these giant thoroughbred horses before and after races to warm them up and to cool them down when their blood is hot. So that's where the term comes from. But I had no large animal experience at all. And it's equally as important. It certainly was back in the 90s to getting into vet school. And we learned just as much on farm animals as we did cats and dogs. In fact, our licensing exam, which is a 2-day written exam, and one day is case-based. There's 7 cases. 4 of them are farm animals. It's like poultry, pig, cattle, and horses. So there's 4. And then 1 is exotic animals, bunnies, lizards, birds, something like that. And only 2 are cats and dogs. Although, yes, the majority of veterinarians are going into companion animal hospital. I guess it's still a throwback to when farms were much more plentiful and needed veterinarians. But I'm happy I know it all. And although I went straight into cats and dogs and my clinic is cats and dogs, and I've never treated a cow or a horse since, having that comparative physiology and that understanding of the different anatomy has saved some animals' lives and helped me out a ton, especially with my travels around the world.
So how was your program broken up? Was it predominantly practical, like actually getting out in the field, so to speak, to work with animals? Or did you find that it was very theoretically heavy as well, maybe a lot more classroom? How was it sort of broken up? And also, can you tell us how long it was?
Yeah, so it was, I did a year of animal science, bachelor's degree, and again, got in after my first year, which then really, like, the stress really hit me because I'm very good academically. I test well, my marks were very good. And then all of a sudden I'm thrown into this veterinarian program, learning things I've never learned before. And although I had the basics or the foundations of physics and calculus and organic chemistry and things of that nature, I didn't have the time to take a Latin course, which a lot of the students did because a lot of the anatomical names are in Latin, and having that Latin background can help. So it is now it's different now. Guelph is quite different now, the veterinarian school, but it was a 5-year program. The first year we called pre-vet. And although it was a full 2 semesters, it was kind of to bring everyone together because there were some people that were coming in with a physics background. There was me, animal science, some people coming with a math background. So there was actually quite a melting pot or mixing pot of different veterinarian students and different academics. So that first year was all just, again, organic chemistry and physics and pathology and whatnot, and a little bit of what we call animal husbandry. So learning about the feeding of animals and the care of animals in the farm setting. Then, the 4 years of vet school after that 1 year pre-vet, we didn't really get to touch animals until our second last year. So the first 2 years we called the year of the ologies. So it was cardiology, physiology, blah, 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 all the ologies. We just begged for the day that we could actually get our hands on an animal. The second last year was sort of, it's like a trade school. Like we were learning to do the surgery and we were doing the surgeries on cadavers, or at the time we were doing surgery on animals from the local shelter, or animals that were bred. It sounds awful to think about it now. It's almost barbaric, but these animals were bred for laboratory testing, on different pharmaceuticals or shampoo or, that sort of thing. It is quite barbaric now that we think about it. And then they would hand them to us and we would neuter them or spay them, which is fine, or we would remove their spleen, or we would remove their eye. And most of these animals were euthanized afterwards. It was only now, like the program now, there's no surgery on live animals until you're actually working for the college, which is better. There's some new challenges with it, but it is obviously a lot more humane. So then the final year, there's no classes. The final year, you're just studying for your licensing exam, hoping you only have to take it once. Because if you take it a second time and fail the second time, you're not allowed to be a veterinarian for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So it's a big deal.
No pressure.
It is a lot of pressure. Our year, so we wrote it in December of 97. We graduated spring of 98. And so the first time you write it is in December. And then the next time is in May or April, right before you graduate, just in case. We had 97% of our class pass both parts on the first try, which that year was the highest for all of North America. So we were pretty excited about that. But the final year is basically doing clinical placements. So you'll be doing 2 weeks of small animal surgery at the university hospital. And you'll be doing 2 weeks of small animal medicine, and then 2 weeks of large animal surgery, 2 weeks of large animal medicine, a week of dermatology, et cetera, et cetera. And then you also occasionally, if you're smart, you get out of the school and you do a regular placement at a regular clinic and learn regular real medicine in real life situations.
Right.
Which is where the students are right now that have come to my clinic. So now it's a lot more hands-on. They're doing physical exams and palpating and listening to the heart as early as second year. So several years before we did. So, it's a little bit better now, I think, than when we graduated, but we did pretty good. The 98 Timberwolves is a pretty good group of veterinarians. We're pretty smart, pretty capable.
Right on. So having been in the game for this long, I want to talk a little bit about, remaining humble and continuous learning, because in your line of work, you are certainly a lifelong learner. So how do you kind of go about approaching like continuously learning and making sure that you stay humble and keeping that spark alive when you obviously come across maybe different animals you maybe haven't worked on before and having to figure things out and maybe even kind of going back to square one sometimes? What does that look like for you as far as continuous learning goes?
Yeah, great question. The thing is keeping that spark alive is a real problem in this industry. A lot of veterinarians are burning out. We unfortunately have some of the highest suicide rates in all professional practices, higher than medical doctors, higher than, I think it's the only professions that are more stress bound than us in North America are like military and police. And I think the problem is the lack of volunteering, the lack of stepping out of your comfort zone. So that's a great way to learn, and it's a great way to stay humble. I'm a good veterinarian. I'm a very good surgeon. I can handle sort of stresses really, really well. And, I can squeeze in appointments and still really not overload myself. And I've never really felt burnt out. I've never lost passion. But part of it is because of the travel that I do. I started traveling 9 years ago to Jamaica. And, although I went there and I helped a lot and I taught the team in Jamaica a lot, I was not prepared for how much they would teach me. And that's what actually opened my eyes to really going overboard with continuing education in the form of volunteering. So right now I volunteer on some sort of trip 1 to 2 weeks a year. On top of that, I volunteer every single week for a full day at a wildlife rehab center where I'm now doing surgery on bald eagles and possums and deer and tiny little birds, and an American bullfrog once needed a broken leg. I don't know how to deal with an American bullfrog. So what do? We called the frog hospital in Australia. There's an actual, if I look in your face, there's an actual emergency frog hospital in Australia, of course, down in Australia. They're a little different there. So I learned so much about all these, and it reminded me back, that comparative anatomy and comparative physiology, that it's what keeps me not only humble, which is very important, but also confident. And I think that's a good dichotomy to have, okay, I'm very, very good at my job, but there's also so much more I need to learn. And to be honest, the people I learn the most from are not the veterinarians. They are the technicians or the vet students. I have these vet students who come to me, and I encourage them to speak up and say, hey, we don't use that treatment protocol anymore. That drug has been shown to increase the risk of problems down the road of A, B, or C. Now we use this. And it's a great way to learn and sort of keep that spark alive.
So I kind of want to expand a little bit on this idea of mental health in your field a little bit. And I was actually kind of looking into this, and I kind of wanted to run this idea by you. I have a colleague that I used to work with. I'm an archaeologist by day. And I can't remember the whole context, but there was one instance where she was working alongside like a group of convicts that were on like some kind of like work release program somehow. And one of the convicts found like a bird that had like an injured wing and couldn't fly. And they brought it to her. And then she noticed that looking around the faces of the convicts, a lot of them had like tears in their eyes for having come across seeing this injured animal and kind of feeling helpless and not able to help it. And now some of these convicts, I mean, for all I know, some of them might have actually committed murder, but then were brought to tears seeing this animal. So I think it's just something innate within us when we see, because like animals are innocent. When we see a hurt animal, we just kind of immediately register in our minds that this animal's done nothing to deserve this fate, right? So do you think maybe that might have something to do with maybe some of the difficulties that veterinarians might face, just because it's just seeing like so many hurt animals and, just kind of like that empathy and sympathy that maybe we innately feel for animals when we see them in that state?
Yeah, there's definitely emotional overload in our profession. And it's not easy in the sense of, yes, I haven't felt burnt out. I haven't lost my compassion fatigue. I absolutely love what I'm doing. It's been 27 years. I absolutely love it. I even enjoy owning my own clinic, which is a rare situation. More than half the veterinarians in the U.S. are discouraging their children from being veterinarians. And it's because of the work-life balance issue, the we don't make as much as people think, and our debt is really high, our student debt, less so in Canada, our student debt. So things like that. But as far as, the emotional overload is tough. We talk about how it's incredibly unhealthy, and this is what we have to do sometimes every day, from going from a very sad euthanasia where we're helping a family say goodbye to their pet. We're holding back tears. I get emotional just thinking about it. We're holding back tears. And then we go and we cry on our own for a minute. And then we have to wipe those tears and literally put on a smile because we're walking in to see a puppy. And people think, well, this is great. You're seeing something happy. No, you're not supposed to switch gears like that. You're not supposed to mourn intensely and then stop mourning and go and be happy-go-lucky. And even if you love that puppy, and yes, it makes us happy, we still haven't processed the other pain that we've felt, which is a fraction to what the owner is feeling, of course. But we see, at least in my particular situation, and most companion animal hospital vets, if you're lucky enough to stay at a clinic or own your clinic for a long time, you are seeing these pets from cradle to grave, essentially, or birth to grave, which is wonderful and beautiful, but also difficult. I think the issue though is a lot of the veterinarians, and I'm one of them, were very type A personalities. You know, we got into a high level academic program in university because our whole life we studied hard and we did well academically, and we had high demands on ourselves. And then we get into university and we have to continue to study hard and even have higher demands on ourselves to get into vet school. We get into vet school and now it's even tougher. I mean, it's easier staying once you're in vet school. You don't need those high marks as much, but the workload is intense. And then you go out and you're dealing with these cases where these animals are you're their only hope. And if you are a general practitioner like I am, often you're having to go beyond what you really are comfortable doing because of finances. Like the owner doesn't have $15,000 to take their dog to the emergency hospital to have its spleen removed due to a tumor. So you got to do it. And while you know how to do it, you're only doing them once every 5 years. It's really, really tough. So there is a lot of burnout. I think veterinarians need to do a better job or at least encourage them at finding more hobbies that truly turn their brain off. I surf even in Toronto when it's super cold at minus 10 Celsius with an ice beard and, you know, giant wetsuit. So I'll surf and you have no time of thinking about anything else when you're trying to survive on that wave. Or I will box. And same thing when I'm sparring with my coach, for a brief second, if I start thinking about work, he punches me in the nose. And, you know, not on purpose, but he does it. And it reminds me to get back in the moment. So having those outlets really, really helps. And I ignore the naysayers. Like there are going to be people there's still people who say to me, oh, you just care about money. You don't care about the animals. Even though I volunteer 60, 70 days a year, you know, 2 months worth of work, I volunteer. And I do all these volunteer trips and I pay for myself. So I just don't listen to them. And it's very easy for me to just tell them to go somewhere else and I don't listen to them. I don't look at Google reviews. I don't respond to negative Google reviews, but I also don't look at good Google reviews. I just do what I know is best and take it from there. But there's a lot of veterinarians that don't have my sort of emotional constitution, you know, that's health, strength of mental health. I do talk to a therapist every once in a while. That helps, you know, all these things. So it's tough. You know, there's a very, very long answer. It is tough and, we need to take it more seriously. But we need to remember as veterinarians how excited we were to get into vet school and how excited we were to graduate and finally be able to be a doctor, for all these animals, for all these animals. So, maybe that's also why I volunteer and have all these students. It kind of reminds me of how blessed I am.
So at what point did you start volunteering to go travel and do this abroad? Like about what point in the timeline of your career did this start becoming a thing?
Yeah, it didn't happen until about 9 years ago. So at the time I'd been a vet 18 years. You know, my kids joke it was a midlife crisis. I was 41, 43 at the time. Maybe it was a little bit. But I actually went, so Jamaica was my first trip. I went for 3 weeks. I actually went not only to volunteer, but also to try and film a television show idea. I wanted to pitch to broadcasters a adventure travel veterinarian show, kind of like Anthony Bourdain, but veterinarians, right? And so I grabbed a couple of film graduates, film school, newly graduated film school students. I didn't pay them. I basically said, look, I'll give you a free trip to Jamaica. I got a place for you to stay, all the beer and pizza you want. How about it? And amazingly, they all said yes. It makes this pretty good, right? You're like 22 years old and you get to go to Jamaica and film and see what happens. And while I enjoyed it and I continued to film some of my future trips, I really fell in love with the volunteer aspect of it and some of the adventures, you know, talk about all around adventures, you know, being introduced to animals I had never seen before, diseases I had never seen before, learning from these non-veterinarians, especially. That was my first taste of surfing was in Jamaica for a brief 2 hour sort of break. We almost take no breaks on any of these trips. We work, long days and for many, many days. But I fell in love with this adventure travel. And even though it sounds like this TV show idea is starting to fall apart and it's not going to get picked up by anybody, you never know. I've continued to travel even without filming it, and it's going to be my retirement. Like, it'll be, my wife and I have a place in Greece because she's from Greece. So we'll live 6 months in Greece, 6 months here in Canada. But while we're in Greece, we're probably going to take these trips to different places. And she basically says she wants to race triathlons. That's what she does. So we got to find a place that has a triathlon, find a place that has surfing, and a place with an animal rescue. We get all those things, we got a perfect vacation spot.
And you found all three of those in Greece already?
Sort of. I mean, I did go to Greece to volunteer, but it wasn't retirement, so I didn't go to I was there to volunteer. So it was on one of these trips. But I'm just thinking later on, when I'm 70 years old, I'll still have some skills that I can use. I want to check out Costa Rica. They've got some great animal rescues and some really good surfing. Panama, I'll go back to Panama, things like that. So, but warmer places. Soon I'm going to be done with, surfing below zero, weather here, below freezing weather.
So you talked a little bit about the wellness routine that you have when you're at your home base there, but what about when you're actually traveling on some of these trips? Because I ask that because I would imagine, and again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, that you doing some of these volunteer trips doesn't keep you maybe in one central location while you're there. You probably have to go here and then there. And I'm sure, days can be very long and very demanding and taxing. So how do you kind of like keep yourself well when you're on these trips like this and you're kind of like away from your routine, if you will? I'm here in North America.
Yeah. I mean, this probably isn't the healthiest thing in the world, but I enjoy it. So for me, I actually come back very relaxed from these trips. There's no self-wellness on these trips. When we went to India, it was my daughter came with me. She was 18. It was her first trip basically anywhere, like outside of North America. So what a culture shock.
Yeah, I'll say.
we were there 11 days. We worked every single day. We worked 12 plus hours, and we would just travel in this little ambulance and do street calls with these, street dogs and street cats and monkeys that were hurt and giant flying bats and whatnot. And so we didn't exercise. We didn't, sort of calm down for a day. But like, back when I get home, I take all those things very, very seriously. So it's kind of like, if you eat really, really well for 6 days, you can have one cheat day. It's sort of like that. If you do 3 months of really good, healthy living, mental health wise, you can handle 10 days of stress. But to me, it was what I loved doing. So yes, it was stressful moments and I was tired, but I loved it so much, and it was such an honor to be able to work with these animal rescues. It wasn't a problem.
So you mentioned a little bit of Asia, a little bit of Europe, and a little bit of Central America here. What about South America and Africa? Have you had any trips that took you to those places yet?
Yeah, so we started in Jamaica, then did Greece, then did India, then did Egypt, did Cairo.
Oh, wow.
And one day up in Alexandria. And while we did take a half a day to check out the pyramids, unfortunately they were closed on the inside, so they're just these big giant, pyramid shaped buildings.
Still amazing though.
They were pretty amazing. We had a much better time though. We had talked what would you call him? A nomad? That's not right. But just like an elderly man that lived in the desert, because we were right by the Sahara Desert, just outside of Cairo. And we were able to communicate. One of our friends spoke French, and he spoke some French. And so he ended up taking us a tour in his pyramid, he called it, $20 American each. And we went and checked out, I think they were called the Nefertiti pyramids just outside of Cairo. And we were able to go in there and like touch the walls and touch the hieroglyphics and see the sarcophagus. So it was really, really cool. So Egypt was amazing. I mean, it was different in the sense of there's a large population in Cairo that do not like dogs. And we were treating dogs that had been purposely shot. One dog had had acid poured on its face. And so we had to do major surgery there. So they revere and worship cats, but dogs are a totally different story. Even the working animals, like the mules and the donkeys and the horses, a lot of them are not in good condition. So we worked with a charity called Prince Kareem Fluffy Pants, if you could believe it. Prince Kareem Fluffy Pants is a horse and donkey sanctuary. Great name and great sanctuary. And they basically, if you're a local Egyptian and your animal's poorly fed and overworked and starting to get sores and it, has parasites and all those things, they will take the animal, and instead of just taking the animal, they will bring it back to health, and then they'll give it back to you with education. Instead of just sort of embarrassing you and scolding you, they want to try and rehabilitate you as the animal owner, let's say, which is a really interesting concept, because a lot of times we're just like, screw them. They shouldn't, if they can't take care of their donkey, they shouldn't have one. Okay, but guess what? They need one. Like, they need one, and they're going to go and get another one. So why don't we try and educate them? So that was Africa, obviously the North Edge. And we did it one day up in Alexandria, which was unbelievable and such a beautiful city. And a lot of Greek heritage there, which is kind of cool. And then as far as South America, I guess technically we only did Central America. We did Panama. But that was, we were contacted by a turtle rescue in Bocas del Toro. And Raul was the name of the guy who contacted us, and we became very good friends. And I can't do his accent, but he did call me Dr. Cleef. He'd say, Dr. Cleef, the dogs and cats are eating my turtles. And so he says, so help the dogs and cats and you'll help my turtles. And so his organization took care of all the nests, of the, hawksbill and the leatherbacks. I think that's right. These giant monster turtles, these sea turtles, but the stray dogs, and some of them are pets, but they roam free during the day, would dig up and eat the nests. So his idea was, let's do a spay neuter program and vaccines and deworming, but let's do a spay neuter program. And if there are less dogs and cats, then there's less animals to eat my turtles, as he would say. So, that was cool, because we did the spay and neuter program in the Panamanian jungle, in this open air building with no electricity, with howler monkeys howling at us, from the treetops. So it was the most surreal and amazing experience of my life. And I did take a half a day to go surfing, and it was wonderful.
All right. So let's see. Just do a quick roster of some of the animals that you've helped here, and broad overview here, of course. So let's see. Turtles. You mentioned bald eagles earlier. Cats and dogs, of course. You mentioned monkeys in India as well. And I think somewhere when I was looking through your social media, I think like crocodilians might have fallen in there at some point too. Crocodiles or alligators. Is there like any particular animal that you remember that might have actually been the most challenging to treat? Maybe not so much just due to like the extent of an injury or an illness, but just anatomically speaking. Is there certain animals that are harder to work on?
Yeah, that's another good question. So, I mean, the one that reminds me the most, or I think about the most, was Clementine, the rhesus monkey, that was talked about briefly in the documentary that I showed you. And her issue was, this was in India, obviously. She had a laceration on her forehead, easy enough to stitch. She had a broken jaw right in the midline, easy enough to fix. I had never worked on a monkey before, but those are types of wounds that happen in dogs all the time, and the anatomy is very similar. I could do surgery on a person if you really needed me to. I've stitched up a few of my friends and I do a pretty good job. But so the comparative anatomy is there. But the issue with her was she had this simple wound on her hand. And what we didn't realize was, she's so intelligent. These rhesus monkeys are like little children, that the stress of being in a cage and not having the ability to, burn off her energy and stay intellectually sort of challenged, she got into a major mental health issue, and she became so stressed and depressed that she self-cannibalized herself, and she ended up chewing up pieces of her hand. We had to amputate the arm. And then how do you keep a bandage on a monkey when their other hand is so nimble? She could take the e-collar off, the big cone of shame off really easily. So that was a challenge because of the sort of the mental health side of it, not because of the actual wound. But I mean, so many of them are new to me. I mean, like before I went to the wildlife rehab place that I volunteer at, I had no bird experience and no orthopedic experience for surgery. I'm a soft tissue surgeon. I don't do broken bones, other than stabilizing them and getting a specialist into my clinic to do it. But they said, well, you're the only vet here. They're one of Canada's largest and busiest wildlife rehabbers, and no veterinarian at the time. So they said, you're going to have to learn to deal with these broken wings. And learn I did. So, they're a big challenge because their bones are so fragile. And then the rehab is so tricky, and they got to be perfect. They got to be able to fly and chase those other birds or catch the insects, or even just migrate, long distances. So birds are a challenge. Everything's a challenge. I love it though. Everything's absolutely a challenge.
Now, where do you see yourself going on the horizon? Are there any places around the world that you haven't been to yet that you would find yourself wanting to go and volunteer at?
Oh, I mean, I could anywhere. People reach out to me now, and I basically look for a place. One, it's got to be a country and a community that I want to go to, in the sense of I want it to be very culturally different than North America. If the more different the language, the more different the food, the more different the landscape, and the more different the animals, I'm excited about being there. And there's also got to be a need, in the sense of if an animal rescue reaches out to me, I want to go and be able to work with them or other animal rescues for a full 10 days. I don't want to go for a couple of days and then, okay, everyone's been vaccinated and, I've dealt with a couple of problems. That's it. And then there's got to be that infrastructure. But I had a person on my podcast recently from the American island of Saipan. This little island is down by the Philippines and Japan. I guess the U.S. Took it over during World War II. Just right next to them is a tiny island where the atomic bomb flew out of, the plane carrying the atomic bomb that hit Nagasaki. And they got 45,000 people and no veterinarian. So really? This woman that I interviewed started up the animal shelter. She's a human nurse, and she just left Saipan and left her family. She has 2 kids, her husband's family. He's a local. Left them for 4 years other than vacation, because she's going to vet school in Washington State. So in 4 years, they'll have a veterinarian. But Saipan is someplace I really want to check out. I didn't know it existed. It's this cool little island, this tropical island. I mean, obviously there's places I don't know exist, but so that one is really on my radar. I will. I'll do anything. I'm looking forward to exploring the world for sure.
Now, 2 places kind of came to mind that might catch your interest. I would say, since we've been talking about
I was going to say, just keep going, but now that you stopped.
Oh, okay. All right.
Plug this in. I can listen.
Yeah. So a couple of places around the world that just sort of came to mind that might be of interest to you when it comes to animals. Well, I just think about them myself because there's a couple of interesting places, interesting animal situations, I guess I'll say, that is there. One of them, of course, would be Madagascar and the lemurs conservation networks that they have there. And the other place is the island of Borneo in Southeast Asia, which consists of Brunei, Malaysia, and Indonesia, because Borneo has, like, I think some of the largest endemic species populations, like, in the entire world, since it's an island. So I don't know if any one of those places that came across your radar before, but those are two islands that come to mind when it comes to, like, animals, and kind of similar, falling along the lines of the criteria that you had suggested. You want it to be like a place where is like culturally diverse, but will still give you access to plenty of animals.
Yeah, definitely. Like Indonesia's been on my radar quite a bit. There's a couple of zoos that also do rescue work, and they have an armed, almost like mini military that goes out twice a month and at gunpoint scoops up poachers. There's a big problem with poaching, like the pangolin, I think it's called. It's like this weird aardvarky sort of dinosaur creature that walks around that is commonly used in I think Eastern medicine. So getting to work with those guys would be quite an adventure. I can't remember the name of the student who's now a veterinarian, but I've got it on. We talk every once in a while on Instagram, and every once in a while it's like, hey, when are you coming down to see us? There's always, there's so many choices, so it's always tough, but that's definitely on my list. I would love Madagascar. I mean, the ring-tailed lemurs are some of my favorite animals. But there has to be a need for me to go down, in the sense of, if there's a really high quality sanctuary there, often with their own veterinarian that's working on staff, what do they need me for? I don't want to go just because I think it's cool. I want to go where they absolutely need me. I'm thinking of Ghana might be, so like Southwest Africa. Ghana might be my next trip as well.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing where this pursuit of adventure takes you. So you mentioned that you have a podcast out there. So tell us a little bit about it, and what can listeners expect if they go tune in?
Yeah. So my podcast is called Vet Life with Dr. Cliff. It's on all the places podcasts are on. And it's a weekly podcast every Tuesday. It's been going on for about 2 years. And like you had said at the beginning, it can be sometimes hard finding guests. So I would say every fourth or fifth episode is just me talking about some cases, talking about things specific in the vet world. But we talk to specialist veterinarians. We talk to wildlife conservationists. I've talked to a few WWE wrestling stars because they're so in love with their pets. And I got to admit, they really enjoy not talking about wrestling and talking about their animals. So it's kind of cool talking to them and getting people to realize, these mega stars, these athletes, no matter what they are, they're just like you and me when they have pets. They love their dogs. They love their cats. They love their gerbils, whatever they may have, their snakes. I had a snake guy on recently, Jordan from Florida. Shout out to Jordan. Yeah, it's a fun, kind of a opening the door, pulling back the curtain to the veterinarian world. Sometimes I get on rants when it's just me, and I'll bitch and complain about something that's going on in the industry. And it's fun. Maybe it's my therapy. It's probably also another way that I deal with burnout, as I get my anger out on the podcast.
All right. Well, I'll leave links in the show notes for this episode, or if we have viewers watching us talk on YouTube, it'll be down in the description below. They can go find the link to the podcast down there. All right. Well, Dr. Cliff, as we kind of start winding down here, I have a few standard questions that I like to ask all my guests towards the end of the show. So, of course, you're going to get asked these as well. And the first thing I like to ask my guests to do is issue a challenge to our listeners, because we got to hear some good stories from you today. We got to get some great information from you today. But as I say, stories, information, inspiration can really only take our listeners and viewers so far. They themselves actually have to follow up with action when they're done listening to us talk. So with that, what challenge would you issue to our listeners and viewers today for them to go out there and start living a more adventurous life?
I would challenge them to get out there and volunteer. And it doesn't have to be a travel, based volunteer, though that's fun. If you're going away on a 10-day all-inclusive, where you're going to be drinking Mai Tais and sitting by the beach, see what kind of charity is out there. It doesn't have to be animal related. It could be anything. And just go for half a day. Like you're going to meet some cool people who are probably going to invite you back to their house and cook you up some homemade authentic meal from whatever country you're visiting. Or they'll tell you the coolest bar to go to. So what a great way to make new friends and to help out and to have this adventure by volunteering when you're on vacation. But it doesn't even have to be on vacation. Like I think, the old people that retire and they get into volunteering, they are the ones that live the happiest and the longest, because it really does feed our soul and feed our hearts to get out there and help people. And again, it doesn't have to be obviously veterinarian or animal rescue related. You could work at your local soup kitchen. You could help with veterans. You could help, deliver food to people that are stuck in the home that aren't that mobile. You could go and clean up a park. Any of these things, you're going to meet new people and you're going to appreciate your life a whole lot more as well. So definitely that's my challenge. Get out and volunteer.
All right. Right on. Couldn't agree more. All right. So what I have for you next is my final three. Again, three standard questions. And I like to think that these are fun questions that all of my guests get asked at the end of the show. And the first of these three questions is, what is your favorite place that you've been to so far?
My favorite place.
Did I mention that these were loaded questions?
There's so many. I'm going to probably say Iqaluit, which is up in the Arctic north of Canada. We have gone up twice, my daughter and I. My son joined me once, a technician of mine joined me once, and we go, and again, it's a community of about 7,000 people, no veterinarian, but they have a veterinarian hospital when there used to be a vet, but it's up in the Arctic Circle, and we go in January when it's minus 40 and there's almost no sunlight, but they got this cool little northernmost, at least in North America, northernmost brewery called New Brew that we go to. So Iqaluit is it's just this awesome indigenous community for the Inuit is what it is up there. They speak Inuktitut, and we love it. We've got a couple of rescue dogs now. You heard one bark a few minutes ago. She's from Iqaluit, so that might be my favorite. But there's always room for it to get knocked out of the top spot.
Well, that's definitely a first to come up on the podcast, Dr. Cliff. I don't think anyone's mentioned a place like that far north.
It's way up there. It's way up there. People have no idea.
Well, and then how did you get there? Is air travel? I'm going to assume pretty limited to get in there, or what?
You would think, but so we drove to Ottawa, which is the capital city of Canada. And then there's once a day, there's a plane that flies up there, and it's a real plane. Like it's a, 150 seater, plane. Now it's mostly they're going up and they're delivering supplies because there's no roads. There's roads in the community, but there's no roads to the community. In fact, there's one road that's, the name of the road is the Road to Nowhere. And when you drive it, it goes nowhere. And eventually it just stops in the middle of this ice barren. It looks like Empire Strikes Back, like that planet of Thoth, I think it was called Hoth or Thoth. But and then there's no, they're ice locked for 6 months of the year. There's no ships that can get there. So it's super remote. But yes, there's a real plane. Problem is both times we've gone, we were stranded for 1 or 2 nights coming back in that there were problems with the one plane or problems with the crew or something. And if you can't go, you can't go. There's no way else out of this place. So, traveling wasn't too bad, but it was definitely barren and very different. But I loved it. It was fun.
All right. Very cool. All right. So my second question in this final three, what is one thing on your bucket list that you have yet to do?
One thing on my bucket list that I've yet to do. I've done so much. So, Yeah, I don't know. I would like to get barreled. And what that means is when you do surfing and you go inside the barrel of the wave, that's to be barreled. Technically you can't use it as a verb. They just say, I got barrel. So it's weird. But that hurts my English brain. That's something I am not good enough yet to survive a barrel. And there's also waves not good enough here for me to do that. But that is why I surf here. The waves are awful and it's very difficult surfing in Lake Ontario. And so then eventually when I do start surfing in proper surfing countries, in the ocean would be nice, where it's warm, my skills will be there and I can eventually get barreled. That's something I really want to do.
All right. Well, that's yet again another first to come up on the podcast. Yeah, very, very unique. I like it. All right. And the final question, and this is a two-parter, and you might have actually answered this a little bit early on, but it is simply, what's your favorite animal, and have you seen this animal in the wild?
What is my favorite animal? I joke that my favorite animal is the next one that's showing up at my door. You know, the next one that I have to treat. It was really special treating the bald eagle. We named her Wolf because she became nasty, which is how they should. They're wild animals. She had a broken humerus bone, which is between the shoulder and the elbow. I did a pinning, et cetera, rehab. And then when the time came to release her, I wanted to be the one to release her. And as I was like holding her and getting things ready to release her we're on the frozen Niagara River, to release her. It was around February. She turned around and bit me and it hurt, but it didn't hurt enough that I got injured. So it was just a little love bite. And I think she was both reminding me that she's a wild animal. So don't get so close. I'd let my guard down, but she was also saying, I could have taken your finger off, but I just gave you a little love bite because I appreciate you, saving my life. So that was pretty cool seeing her fly off into the blue sky. Definitely.
All right. Very good. Now, bald eagles have come up a couple of times for this question, but for good reason, though, I would say, because they certainly are very incredible.
Gorgeous. So beautiful.
All right. Right on. All right. Well, Dr. Cliff, that's it. That's all the questions that I have for you today. But before we call it a day here, let's just recap one more time where our listeners and viewers can go tune into your podcast, and also where can they go connect with you, like on social media and the internet space.
Yeah. So again, my podcast is called Vet Life with Dr. Cliff. It's on all the podcast channels. And definitely check it out. I'd love to hear from you guys. And then as far as social media, I'm a big Instagram guy. So you can follow me at Dr. Cliff Worldwide Vet. So Dr. Cliff Worldwide Vet. Pick the one with the little blue check mark, cause there's a few, not real ones out there which I guess means that I'm doing something right, that people are starting to pretend they're me. Yeah, so find me on Instagram, and I'd love to hear from everybody.
All right. Well, like I mentioned, I'll have links for all of that down in the show notes for this episode. Or again, if we have viewers watching us talk on YouTube, it'll all be down in the description below. All right. Well, Dr. Cliff, I want to thank you very much for taking the time for joining me today. I mean, I know you got a pretty packed schedule, as you've alluded to, but I really appreciate you being here and sharing your stories and insights with myself and the listeners. That's been great, sir.
Thanks, Josh. It's been a lot of fun.
All right. Right on.